Emily Carter grew up in a small, windswept town on the rocky coast of Maine, where the Atlantic Ocean's roar was as familiar as the sound of her own heartbeat. The town was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone else's business. Where the diner on Main Street served the same pie for decades, and where children ran barefoot in the salty wind, chasing seagulls and daring each other to jump off the weathered docks. It was quiet, predictable, and safe, but Emily had always felt restless, like the horizon beyond the harbor called her name. Her grandfather, a retired Navy officer, had been her earliest inspiration. On rainy afternoons, she would sit at his kitchen table, listening to his stories of distant ports, roaring storms, and midnight watches on enormous ships. He spoke of courage, of discipline, and of loyalty in a voice that carried authority without ever needing to shout. Before he passed, he pressed a hand over Emily's wrist and whispered, "This anchor isn't just ink, it's a promise. Live it, Em, always." That afternoon, she had gotten a small anchor tattoo in navy blue on her inner wrist. Over the years, it had faded, the lines smudged by time and sunlight, but the meaning had never wavered. By the age of 22, Emily was the kind of person who drew attention without trying. Her frame was slender, almost delicate, and her quiet demeanor made people underestimate her. She had deep brown eyes, reflective and sharp, and hair that she often kept tied back in a no-nonsense braid, practical for whatever work she might take on. She worked part-time at the local seafood market, loading crates of fish and lobsters, helping tourists navigate the tide schedules, and occasionally filling in at the docks. But even as she worked tirelessly, she felt that life in her small town was never going to be enough. She wanted more challenge, more purpose, more adventure beyond the horizon. On the morning she decided to enlist in the Navy, Emily stared down at her faded anchor tattoo, tracing its outline with her finger. It had been over a decade since she'd gotten it, but every time she looked at it, she felt her grandfather's hand on her wrist, steadying her, reminding her of her own strength. The ink was smudged and slightly blurred, and she sometimes caught people in town glancing at it with a mixture of amusement and skepticism. "She's always been full of dreams," they'd say, "but this one seems impossible." That's exactly why she had to do it. The recruitment office was only a 15-minute drive from her home, but it felt like stepping into another world. The building was plain and unassuming from the outside, a simple brick structure with a flagpole out front. Yet inside, the energy was tense, professional, and intimidating. Posters of warships, fighter jets, and heroic Navy personnel lined the walls. A recruiter, mid-40s and sharply dressed, eyed her skeptically as she stepped forward. "I'm here to enlist," Emily said, her voice calm but resolute. "The recruiter studied her, taking in her slight frame, the casual jeans and hoodies she wore, and the faded tattoo on her wrist. "You sure about that?" he asked. "It's not an easy path, and frankly, a lot of people don't make it." His tone carried a hint of doubt that made Emily's jaw tighten. She didn't flinch. "I'm sure," she replied simply. "I want this." He raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. He handed her a clipboard with forms, and Emily spent the next hour filling out personal information, medical history, and background checks. Every signature felt like a small victory. Even as the recruiter glanced over her paperwork, he seemed unconvinced, shaking his head at her casual confidence. It was as though he expected her to falter at any moment, but she wouldn't. Outside the office, the wind from the Atlantic whipped at her hair. She stepped back onto the sidewalk, looking out at the horizon where the water met the sky. Somewhere out there, beyond the familiar lobstering docks and the lighthouse she had climbed as a child, her life was waiting. She imagined herself on the deck of a warship, the sea spray stinging her face, radar and sonar equipment humming around her, the crew looking to her for guidance. It felt alive, urgent, and real in a way her small town had never been. Her friends and neighbors, of course, had reactions ranging from incredulous to dismissive. At the diner, someone muttered, "She'll never last a week." At the market, coworkers joked about how her tattoo didn't exactly scream combat ready. Even her younger cousins laughed, teasing her about joining the Navy and leaving the quiet, predictable life behind. But Emily absorbed it all like water against a rock. Every word, every smirk, every chuckle reinforced her resolve. She would prove them wrong, not with words, but with action. Emily spent the next few weeks preparing herself in ways both practical and personal. She ran along the rugged coastline at dawn, her sneakers kicking up sand and salt water, imagining the physical endurance boot camp would demand. She did pull-ups on the metal railing of the docks, pretending it was an obstacle course. At home, she studied Navy manuals, memorizing ranks, ship layouts, and basic tactics, determined to arrive with knowledge, not just determination. Every evening, she practiced breathing techniques, mental focus exercises, and visualization, picturing herself navigating crises on the open sea with calm precision. Her parents were cautiously supportive. Her mother, a schoolteacher, worried about the danger, but also admired Emily's determination. "Promise me you'll stay safe," she said, brushing her daughter's hair back from her face. Her father, quiet and reserved, had served briefly in the Coast Guard years ago. He handed her a small, worn notebook filled with notes on seamanship and navigation. "Use this," he said simply, "and remember what you're capable of." It was a small gesture, but Emily understood its weight. She had her family's support, even if it was tempered with fear. By the night before her first official day at the recruitment office, Emily couldn't sleep. She sat by her bedroom window, looking out at the moonlit water, tracing the faint lines of her anchor tattoo. She thought of her grandfather's stories, of storms that seemed impossible to survive, of calm nights where a single lookout's decision saved lives, of camaraderie and trust forged under pressure. She whispered to herself, "I'll make you proud. I'll live this promise." Next morning, Emily walked into the recruitment office with steady steps and clear purpose. She knew there would be obstacle-skeptical recruiters, doubting peers, grueling physical and mental challenges, but she felt ready. Every laugh she had endured, every skeptical glance she had met, every moment of doubt in others' eyes had prepared her for this. That faded anchor tattoo wasn't just a symbol of her grandfather. It was her declaration. She wouldn't just survive the Navy. She would thrive, leaving no one, including herself, in doubt of what she was capable of. And as she signed the final forms and officially took her place among those aspiring to serve, a subtle shift occurred. Even the recruiter who had doubted her looked up, a small flicker of recognition in his eyes. Emily Carter, with her faded tattoo and quiet determination, was no longer just a small-town girl. She was a future sailor, a rising force, and the first step on a journey that would test her courage, intellect, and resilience in ways she had never imagined. The horizon outside the office window seemed wider, more inviting than ever. Emily took a deep breath, feeling the Atlantic wind on her face and the weight of her legacy on her wrist. She was ready. The small town that had doubted her would soon hear her story, and the Navy would discover that courage, resolve, and determination could not be measured by appearances. With her anchor tattoo as her guide and her grandfather's wisdom in her heart, Emily Carter stepped forward, prepared to embrace a life of challenge, responsibility, and unyielding adventure. The moment Emily stepped onto the training grounds of the Navy boot camp, she realized she was entering a world that demanded more than courage. It demanded everything she had. The sprawling facility, located near the coast in Virginia, buzzed with activity. Recruits from every corner of the country moved in regimented lines, their voices sharp, and synchronized as drill instructors barked commands that echoed off the concrete and metal structures. The smell of salt, sweat, and sea air mingled, creating a tangible intensity that made Emily's heart race. This was no longer her quiet Maine town. This was the crucible of transformation. From the first morning, Emily was tested in ways she could never have imagined. Physical training began before sunrise, the cold wind cutting across the parade grounds while drill instructors pushed every recruit to their limits. Push-ups, sit-ups, long-distance runs, obstacle courses. Each exercise was designed to break down and rebuild. Emily's small frame and delicate appearance drew whispers and even outright laughter from some of the larger recruits. "She'll never make it," a burly man from Texas muttered as he clumped past her during a grueling 2-mile run. But Emily refused to respond. She focused on her breath, her pace, and the rhythm of her heartbeat. The first obstacle course was a brutal initiation. Tall walls, muddy trenches, swinging ropes, and balance beams tested not only strength, but strategy. Emily struggled initially, her legs shaking as she tried to scale the final wall. The drill instructor barked, "Get up! You want to be a sailor or a spectator?" Emily gritted her teeth, recalling her grandfather's words about perseverance. With a surge of determination, she hauled herself over the wall, mud and sweat dripping down her face. Some recruits clapped quietly, impressed by her tenacity. Others, still doubtful, shook their heads. Emily didn't care. Every obstacle conquered was proof that she belonged. Beyond the physical strain, boot camp demanded mental toughness. Recruits faced endless memorization of ranks, naval codes, ship layouts, and operational procedures. Emily spent late nights in the barracks, repeating the information until it became second nature. Her roommate, a sharp-tongued recruit from Florida, initially mocked her, calling her the girl with the faded tattoo. Emily responded only with calm focus, her eyes reflecting quiet determination. Soon, the roommate noticed Emily's attention to detail, how she could recite complex protocols from memory and anticipate potential problems before they arose. The teasing turned into reluctant respect, and by the end of the first week, Emily had quietly earned her place among the recruits who mattered. Sleep deprivation became another enemy. Lights out came late, and mornings arrived early. Recruits were expected to be alert at all times, prepared for drills, inspections, or sudden emergency simulations. Emily struggled at first, her body rebelling against the constant pressure. Nights were spent lying awake on a thin mattress, thinking of her grandfather's stories, visualizing herself standing on the deck of a warship, confident and capable. Each night, she whispered to herself, "I can do this. I will do this." That mental mantra became her lifeline, a shield against exhaustion and doubt. Meals were a battlefield in their own right. The cafeteria was crowded, noisy, and regimented. Emily noticed how some recruits tried to assert dominance by mocking others during mealtimes. She endured sideways glances, smirks, and whispers about her small stature and the faded anchor tattoo that wrapped around her wrist like a silent declaration of ambition. But she learned to navigate the social terrain with grace. She focused on nourishment, eating enough to fuel her body without getting distracted by petty games of intimidation. Slowly, a small group of recruits began to admire her poise under pressure. Perhaps the hardest challenge was learning to trust others and be trusted in return. Boot camp emphasized teamwork above all else. Every obstacle, every drill, every simulation required synchronization and cooperation. Initially, Emily felt isolated, often paired with recruits who doubted her capabilities. In one particularly grueling water survival exercise, she had to rely on a fellow recruit to reach a distant platform, their combined strength and coordination determining success or failure. Emily's patience, clear communication, and quick thinking transformed the experience from a near disaster into a lesson in mutual respect. By the end of the week, she had begun to forge alliances that would support her in the days ahead. Physical injuries were inevitable. Emily bruised ribs during obstacle courses. Her hands blistered from rope climbs, and her legs ached from endless running. There were moments when pain threatened to derail her progress. But she refused to yield. She treated her body with care, stretching, icing injuries when possible, and listening to the subtle signals that told her when to push harder and when to recover. Every scar, every ache became a badge of commitment, a silent testimony to the relentless effort she poured into every day. Emily's character and intelligence soon caught the attention of the instructors. In one strategic exercise, recruits were tasked with identifying potential hazards on a simulated ship and proposing solutions. Emily, drawing on knowledge she had memorized and scenarios she had envisioned, quickly assessed the situation and offered solutions that no one else had considered. The drill instructor, initially skeptical of her, nodded approvingly, and other recruits began to see her as more than just the girl with the faded tattoo. She was a problem solver, a thinker, and someone capable of thriving under pressure. Yet boot camp was not without emotional trials. Letters from home arrived sporadically, and Emily often found herself missing her parents and the familiarity of Maine. She wrote letters in return, detailing small victories, minor frustrations, and moments of unexpected triumph. At night, she allowed herself brief moments of reflection, thinking of her grandfather's anchor tattoo, the promise it represented, and the legacy she was determined to uphold. These quiet moments of introspection strengthened her resolve, reminding her why she had come here, to live up to something larger than herself. By the midpoint of boot camp, Emily's transformation was visible. The other recruits, once dismissive, began to acknowledge her abilities. She could run with the best, navigate obstacles with precision, memorize protocols effortlessly, and remain calm under intense scrutiny. Her faded anchor tattoo, once a source of ridicule, had become a symbol of resilience, a quiet emblem of her journey. The instructors began to assign her small leadership roles, testing her judgment and decision-making. Under simulated crisis, Emily accepted these responsibilities with humility, but also with determination to excel. One of the defining moments came during a nighttime navigation exercise. Recruits were divided into teams, tasked with reaching a checkpoint across difficult terrain while maintaining communication and operational efficiency. Emily's team struggled at first, hampered by fatigue and uncertainty. Sensing the mounting frustration, Emily took the lead, assigning roles clearly, coordinating movements, and keeping morale high. By the time they reached the checkpoint, not only had they completed the mission, but they had done so with efficiency and precision that drew commendation from the instructors. Emily's ability to lead under pressure had begun to shine. Her small victories accumulated, shaping her reputation among the recruits. The initial laughter and ridicule faded into cautious admiration. Where once her peers had questioned her strength, now they deferred to her judgment. Her roommate, who had mocked her at the beginning, became a steadfast ally, watching Emily with growing respect as she faced each day's trials with relentless dedication. Even the drill instructors, often gruff and unyielding, began to recognize the quiet force that Emily had become, a recruit who would not merely survive, but thrive. As boot camp drew toward its end, Emily reflected on the transformation she had undergone. She thought of her grandfather's anchor tattoo, once a small symbol of aspiration, now a constant reminder of her own perseverance. She had faced ridicule, physical exhaustion, mental challenges, and emotional strain, and emerged stronger, more capable, and ready for the next stage of her journey. Boot camp had forged not just her body, but her mind and spirit, preparing her for the realities of life at sea, under pressure, and in service to her country. When the final inspection arrived, Emily stood tall among her peers. The drill instructor's eyes swept over the recruits, noting precision, discipline, and readiness. Emily felt a quiet pride, knowing that the weeks of struggle, sweat, and determination had culminated in this moment. She had proven to herself and to others that courage, skill, and perseverance were far more important than appearance or skepticism. The faded anchor tattoo on her wrist felt almost alive now, pulsing with the promise she had fulfilled and the adventures that still awaited. Emily Carter had entered boot camp as a small-town girl with a dream and a faded tattoo. She would leave as a competent, respected, and confident sailor, prepared to face the unpredictable challenges of naval life. The journey had only just begun, but already the foundation of courage, resilience, and determination had been laid. The Navy would test her further, but Emily knew she had what it took. Whatever came next, she would meet it head-on, guided by her grandfather's legacy, her anchor tattoo, and the unyielding spirit that refused to be underestimated. The morning Emily boarded her assigned ship, a sleek guided missile destroyer named the USS Valor, the salty tang of the Atlantic filled her lungs. The vessel was massive, imposing, and humming with mechanical precision, far larger than anything she had imagined during boot camp. The deck creaked under her boots, metal railings glinting in the early sunlight, as crew members moved with the practiced rhythm of veterans who had spent years at sea. Emily's heart raced with excitement and nerves. This was no longer training. This was her first real assignment, a chance to prove herself in the unforgiving environment of the open ocean. Her first impression of the crew was mixed. Many of the sailors, seasoned men and women, were polite enough but kept their distance, sizing her up with wary eyes. Whispers circulated among them about the small, slight woman with the faded anchor tattoo on her wrist. "She won't last." "A week," a burly sailor murmured while stacking supplies below deck. Emily ignored the remark, focusing instead on absorbing the ship's layout, learning the location of every control panel, lifeboat, and emergency station. She moved with purpose, determined not to let doubt define her experience. The commanding officer, Lieutenant Commander Harris, was a stern but fair woman in her early 40s. She glanced at Emily with a measured expression, noting her small stature, but also the calm determination in her eyes. "Miss Carter," she said during their brief introduction, "this is your first deployment. Pay attention, follow orders, and remember your job is to anticipate problems before they happen. The ocean doesn't forgive mistakes." Emily nodded, feeling a thrill at the responsibility placed upon her shoulders. The first few days were a whirlwind of orientation and routine drills. Emily learned the subtle hum of engines, the intricacies of navigation systems, and the exact placement of safety equipment. She stayed late each evening, reviewing schematics and operational manuals, determined to know the ship as intimately as her own hands. During drills, she was attentive and precise, often noticing discrepancies that others overlooked. On one occasion, she detected a minor calibration error in the radar system that could have led to a navigational hazard. She reported it immediately, earning a nod of approval from the systems officer. Despite her growing competence, Emily still faced skepticism from certain crew members. A few of the older sailors occasionally muttered doubts, pointing at her tattoo or her slight build. "Small hands, small girl, small chance," one joked, though the humor carried an undertone of challenge. Emily didn't engage with the jabs. Instead, she let her actions speak, focusing on accuracy, efficiency, and reliability. Slowly, the whispering began to shift. Skepticism gave way to cautious respect, then, gradually, to acknowledgement. Life aboard the destroyer was relentless. The days blurred together with drills, maintenance, and operational checks. The nights brought a different challenge. Watches on the deck under moonlit skies, when the ocean's vast darkness tested both endurance and alertness. Emily found herself standing at the railing for hours, scanning the horizon for anomalies, learning to interpret the subtle changes in waves and wind. Each night sharpened her senses, training her to anticipate situations that might escape less attentive eyes. Her anchor tattoo, once a mark of heritage, became a symbol of vigilance and quiet determination. The first real test came during a routine navigation exercise. A small simulated threat appeared on the radar, and the crew was tasked with responding. Quickly, Emily noticed that the standard procedure would have led the ship too close to shallow waters. With measured urgency, she pointed out a safer approach, suggesting adjustments to the ship's heading. Lieutenant Commander Harris, after a moment's deliberation, followed Emily's recommendation. The exercise concluded without incident, and the commanding officer later commended Emily for her foresight. That moment, small as it seemed, began to shift the perception of her among her peers. Beyond technical skill, Emily also discovered the importance of camaraderie. The close quarters of the ship demanded trust, cooperation, and respect. Meal times became opportunities to observe, learn, and quietly contribute to group cohesion. On deck, during maintenance or drills, she offered help without seeking recognition, demonstrating reliability. Slowly, crew members began to approach her with questions, seeking advice, or simply acknowledging her presence. The anchor tattoo, once a target of derision, had transformed into a quiet emblem of respect, subtle, understated, and unmissable for those who paid attention. Emily's adaptability was put to the test during a surprise storm that struck the ship midweek. Winds howled, waves towered over the deck, and equipment rattled as the crew scrambled to secure loose gear and maintain stability. Emily, positioned at the radar and navigation station, remained calm. She coordinated with her station mates, checking readings, verifying course adjustments, and alerting the bridge to sudden shifts in weather patterns. Her meticulous attention prevented minor errors from escalating into dangerous mishaps. By the storm's end, the commanding officer took note. Emily's composure under pressure had prevented potential accidents, a testament to her training and innate steadiness. As the days turned into weeks, Emily continued to prove herself. She mastered complex systems, understood subtle crew dynamics, and refined her instincts for operational decision-making. One evening, while performing routine checks, she noticed a discrepancy in the ship's sonar readings. Though minor, it could have indicated a potential collision risk with underwater debris. Acting on instinct, she alerted the officer of the deck, who immediately verified the reading and adjusted the course. The risk was averted, and once again, Emily's foresight earned quiet acknowledgement from her peers. Emily also learned to navigate the social intricacies of life aboard a ship. Some crew members were naturally brash, testing boundaries with new recruits. Others were withdrawn, wary of forming bonds that might be tested by the harsh conditions of deployment. Emily approached each interaction with patience and observation, offering help where needed and maintaining boundaries where appropriate. Over time, her reputation as competent, reliable, and insightful began to grow, and whispers of doubt gave way to murmurs of admiration. Even the most skeptical sailors began to acknowledge that Emily Carter was not just a recruit. They were witnessing the emergence of a skilled sailor. Despite the growing respect, Emily remained humble. She knew that true competence required vigilance, preparation, and the constant pursuit of improvement. Every morning, she reviewed manuals and diagrams, memorized ship layouts, and practiced emergency scenarios. Each exercise strengthened not only her technical skills, but also her confidence, her ability to act decisively in critical situations. The anchor tattoo on her wrist, faded but ever present, became a silent reminder of her grandfather's legacy and her own promise to rise to every challenge. The culmination of her first month aboard the USS Valor was a full-scale emergency. Drill. The crew simulated a sudden breach in the ship's hull, requiring immediate coordination, resourcefulness, and quick action to contain damage. Emily's station was critical, monitoring pressure systems, alerting the bridge, and assisting in coordinating emergency repairs. Her prior experiences, meticulous attention to detail, and calm demeanor proved invaluable. The drill concluded successfully, with all potential hazards neutralized. Lieutenant Commander Harris gave Emily a nod of approval, acknowledging her role in the smooth execution of the exercise. By the end of the deployment's first month, Emily had firmly established herself. The initial laughter and skepticism had vanished, replaced by acknowledgement of her intelligence, diligence, and courage. Her anchor tattoo, once a target for mockery, had become a subtle emblem of her strength and dedication. Emily Carter, the small-town girl who had arrived with a dream, had transformed into a competent sailor, ready to face the challenges of life at sea. The horizon no longer represented uncertainty. It was a field of opportunity, a vast expanse where her skills, determination, and courage could thrive. Emily knew the journey ahead would only grow more demanding. Threats would come, crises would test her limits, and moments of doubt might resurface. But she had proven to herself and to her shipmates that she belonged. She had mastered the basics, earned respect, and demonstrated foresight and composure in high-pressure situations. Every challenge conquered at sea reinforced her conviction that courage, preparation, and persistence outweighed skepticism, appearances, and doubt. As the USS Valor cut through the endless waves of the Atlantic, Emily leaned against the railing, the wind whipping across her face, and allowed herself a quiet moment of reflection. She thought of her grandfather, the anchor tattoo on her wrist, and the promise she had made to live boldly and with integrity. She was no longer just a small-town girl with a dream. She was a sailor capable, respected, and ready to meet whatever the ocean and life would demand. Her journey had only begun, and the first chapter of her true service had been written with quiet courage and steadfast determination. The Atlantic stretched endlessly before the USS Valor, a restless expanse of silver waves under a low-hanging morning sun. Emily Carter stood on the bridge, her fingers resting lightly on the rail, scanning the horizon for any anomalies. It was early in her first deployment, but already she had learned that the ocean was unpredictable and unforgiving. Every ripple, every distant shadow could signal a threat. The crew moved with precision, their footsteps echoing off the steel deck, a hum of engines forming a constant undercurrent. Emily's mind, trained in boot camp and honed over weeks at sea, never rested. Earlier that morning, intelligence reports indicated potential hostile activity near international waters where the USS Valor was patrolling. The officers briefed the crew, emphasizing vigilance, situational awareness, and strict adherence to protocol. Emily listened intently, absorbing details about radar coverage, navigational routes, and communication channels. The briefing concluded, but Emily remained at her station, reviewing sensor data and comparing it to the ship's predicted route. Something subtle caught her eye, a minor blip on the radar that didn't align with expected vessel traffic. She studied it carefully, noting irregular movements that others might dismiss as technical noise. Her first instinct was to alert the officer on duty, Lieutenant Ramirez, a seasoned sailor with years of experience. "Sir," Emily said quietly, pointing to the screen, "there's a blip here. Coordinates don't match known traffic patterns." It could be nothing, but it seems unusual. Ramirez squinted at the display, adjusting controls. Could be a glitch," he said dismissively. "Keep monitoring." Emily didn't argue. She watched, analyzing patterns, calculating possibilities, and preparing to act if the situation escalated. Her training had taught her patience as much as precision. Hours passed, and the blip persisted, moving unpredictably. Emily's intuition nudged her repeatedly. The officers remained skeptical, yet she documented every observation, noting slight changes in speed and direction. By late afternoon, the blip had drawn closer to the Valor's patrol path. Emily, realizing the potential danger, requested permission to run a diagnostic on the radar system, while cross-referencing sonar readings. Lieutenant Ramirez, initially hesitant, granted the request. The process confirmed Emily's suspicion. The blip represented an unidentified vessel moving with coordinated intent, potentially hostile. The bridge grew tense. Crew members adjusted their positions, their faces a mix of focus and concern. The commanding officer, Lieutenant Commander Harris, arrived to assess the situation. Emily briefed her succinctly, outlining the irregularities, potential risks, and suggested maneuvers to maintain a safe distance while tracking the vessel. Harris studied the data, nodding slowly. "Good work, Carter. I want you to coordinate with navigation and weapon systems to prepare contingency measures." Emily felt a surge of responsibility. Her observations had shifted from being ignored to commanding strategic attention. As evening approached, the sea grew restless. Dark clouds gathered, casting a shadow across the deck. The unidentified vessel, now clearly visible on radar, altered its trajectory toward the Valor. Emily coordinated with communications, alerting other nearby Navy assets and preparing defensive protocols. Her calm, methodical demeanor steadied the crew, who relied on her guidance to navigate the developing crisis. The tension was palpable. Every crew member knew that even a small miscalculation could escalate into disaster. The first encounter came as the unidentified ship launched warning maneuvers, testing the Valor's responsiveness. Emily directed radar sweeps, monitored sonar, and relayed critical data to the bridge. Lieutenant Commander Harris and the officers implemented her recommended adjustments, maintaining safe distance while ensuring the ship was combat-ready. Emily's calculations of speed, trajectory, and environmental factors allowed the Valor to anticipate the enemy vessel's movements, positioning the ship for optimal defense while avoiding confrontation if possible. Her precise coordination prevented panic, keeping the crew focused and effective. Hours stretched into the night. Waves pounded the hull, and the wind screamed across the deck. Emily maintained her watch, fatigue threatening her concentration, but her determination never wavered. She double-checked readings, updated the bridge continuously, and coordinated with officers to prepare for every possible scenario. During a sudden maneuver by the hostile vessel, Emily quickly identified a potential blind spot in the radar coverage. She alerted the bridge, allowing the Valor to adjust its heading and prevent a collision risk. Small as it seemed, the maneuver avoided chaos and preserved the crew's confidence in her abilities. The crisis escalated when the hostile vessel simulated an aggressive approach, testing the Valor's response. Emily's calculations predicted the optimal defensive positioning while minimizing exposure to potential attacks. She coordinated with weapon systems, ensuring readiness without triggering unnecessary alarms. Officers on deck, initially skeptical of her judgment, followed her lead, impressed by her clarity under pressure. Emily's quiet confidence and attention to detail allowed the crew to operate efficiently, avoiding panic and maintaining composure in an increasingly dangerous situation. Her anchor tattoo, once mocked, seemed to pulse with significance, a symbol of steadfastness and focus in the storm. By midnight, the situation reached a critical point. The hostile vessel's actions indicated that an attack might be imminent. Emily, monitoring radar and sonar simultaneously, identified a potential vulnerability in their approach. She recommended a minor but precise course correction, increasing the Valor's maneuverability and readiness. Lieutenant Commander Harris executed the maneuver, and the crew responded with seamless coordination. The tension on deck was electric, but Emily's foresight and decisiveness ensured that every action was calculated, every response deliberate. For the first time, some of the most skeptical sailors began to whisper in admiration rather than doubt. As the hours dragged on, the hostile vessel retreated, perhaps deterred by the Valor's preparedness and visible competence. The immediate threat passed, but the lessons of the day were profound. Emily had observed patterns others missed, acted decisively under pressure, and coordinated critical systems to prevent disaster. Her reputation on the ship shifted permanently. Whispers of doubt turned to admiration, and the crew increasingly sought her insight. Emily's anchor tattoo, once a source of ridicule, had become a symbol of reliability, vigilance, and quiet strength, a reminder that skill and courage often transcended appearance. The aftermath required meticulous work. Crew members checked systems, repaired minor damage, and reviewed protocols to ensure readiness. Emily contributed tirelessly, analyzing data, verifying calculations, and assisting in documentation. Her commitment did not go unnoticed. Lieutenant Commander Harris privately commended her, noting that her vigilance had prevented what could have become a catastrophic engagement. Emily felt a mixture of pride, relief, and humility. She knew that bravery wasn't just about heroics, it was about preparation, foresight, and the calm application of knowledge in moments of crisis. The next morning, the sun rose over a calm but vigilant sea. Emily stood on the deck, watching the horizon, feeling the wind whip her hair across her face. The crew moved with renewed efficiency, their confidence bolstered by the previous nights. Success. Conversations, once punctuated by doubt and quiet skepticism, now included questions and acknowledgments directed toward Emily. Even the older sailors who had initially mocked her tattoo offered subtle nods of respect. She had earned her place, not through bluster or bravado, but through competence, focus, and the steady application of her skills. Reflecting on the crisis, Emily felt a deep sense of growth. She realized that the ocean was both a teacher and a test, a vast arena where mistakes could be fatal and foresight could save lives. Every observation, every calculation, every decision mattered. She had learned to trust her instincts, rely on her training, and maintain composure under pressure. The faded anchor tattoo on her wrist had guided her silently, a constant reminder of her grandfather's legacy and the promise she had made to herself to live courageously and diligently. By the time the USS Valor returned to routine patrol, Emily had transformed from a promising recruit into a trusted crew member. Her contributions during the crisis had demonstrated not only her technical skill, but also her ability to lead through calm guidance and decisive action. The crew's perception of her had shifted irreversibly. Where doubt once existed, respect now prevailed. Emily's quiet confidence, her dedication to preparation, and her unwavering focus had ensured that her first real encounter at sea became a lesson in effective leadership under pressure. As night fell over the ocean, Emily leaned against the railing, gazing at the endless waves. The crisis had tested her in every way, physically, mentally, and emotionally, but she had endured. Her first high-stakes encounter at sea had solidified her place aboard the Valor, proving that courage was not defined by size or appearance, but by determination, skill, and the willingness to act decisively when it mattered most. Emily Carter had emerged from the crisis not only unscathed, but stronger, more capable, and ready for the greater challenges that awaited her on the horizon. The USS Valor cut through the waves at dawn, the horizon painted in streaks of gold and crimson. Emily Carter stood on the bridge, her eyes scanning both the open sea and the array of monitors in front of her. After the crisis the previous week, she had become a trusted member of the crew. Yet today would test her in a way that no drill, simulation, or observation could. Reports from naval intelligence indicated that hostile vessels had been detected near an important shipping lane. Unlike the earlier encounter, this was no practice. This was a potential engagement that could threaten civilian and military lives. The ship's atmosphere was tense but disciplined. Sailors moved with quiet urgency, each knowing their role in the impending operation. Emily felt the familiar rush of adrenaline, the precise mix of fear and determination that came before decisive action. She reviewed the radar, sonar, and communications feeds, noting patterns and identifying vessels in the area. Among the ships, one stood out, a fast-moving target, showing aggressive maneuvers, its trajectory heading toward a nearby convoy. Emily's pulse quickened. She understood that the decisions she made, combined with the bridge team's actions, could prevent catastrophe. Lieutenant Commander Harris called the officers to the bridge. Maps, charts, and digital displays glowed under the dimmed lights. "We may need to engage," she said, her voice steady but tinged with urgency. "Carter, I want you coordinating targeting and sensor readings. Your eyes are critical here. Keep us ahead of any threats." Emily nodded, taking her position with precision. She felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. The lives of hundreds, both aboard the Valor and on the convoy, depended on vigilance and split-second decisions. The hostile vessels made their move. Fast, maneuverable, and armed. They tested the Valor's defenses immediately. Emily monitored their movements, calculating speed, angles, and possible attack patterns. She relayed this information to the bridge, guiding the officers in adjusting positioning, preparing countermeasures, and alerting weapons teams. Every minute counted. Hesitation could be fatal. Crew members responded with practiced efficiency. But it was Emily's foresight and meticulous attention that allowed the ship to maintain an edge over the aggressive vessels. As the engagement intensified, the Valor deployed a combination of countermeasures and evasive maneuvers. Missiles streaked across the horizon, naval cannons fired controlled volleys, and electronic countermeasures jammed targeting systems of the hostile ships. Emily coordinated continuously, adjusting readings, predicting evasive maneuvers, and communicating with both navigation and weapons teams. Her calm, precise directives allowed the Valor to remain in a favorable position while minimizing risk. To the convoy, she felt the familiar hum of adrenaline and focus. This was her element, where training and instinct intersected under pressure. One hostile vessel attempted a flanking maneuver, aiming to exploit what it perceived as a weak point in the Valor's formation. Emily's calculations detected the movement before anyone else. She immediately alerted the bridge and recommended a countermaneuver that would neutralize the threat without risking collateral damage. Lieutenant Commander Harris executed the plan, and the crew followed with precision. The hostile ship's attempt failed, and the Valor maintained control of the engagement. Crew members exchanged glances, their initial skepticism of Emily now replaced with quiet acknowledgement. Her strategic insight had averted potential disaster. Hours passed in the intense ballet of naval combat. Emily's attention never wavered. She coordinated with sonar operators to track the movements of each hostile vessel, relayed crucial data to weapons teams, and monitored the convoy's status. Her anchor tattoo, visible on her wrist, seemed almost symbolic, an emblem of steadfastness and resolve amid chaos. For many aboard the ship, this was their first real combat engagement. For Emily, it was a culmination of every drill, lesson, and experience that had prepared her for this moment. The battle reached its peak when one hostile vessel attempted to approach the convoy from an unexpected angle, exploiting a blind spot in their coverage. Emily identified the threat immediately, calculating its trajectory and speed. She issued rapid, precise instructions to the weapons teams and bridge officers, coordinating the ship's movement to intercept the vessel without endangering the convoy. The maneuver worked flawlessly. The hostile ship was neutralized, its weapons disabled, and the immediate danger averted. Crew members breathed a collective sigh of relief, realizing that Emily's keen eye and quick thinking had been instrumental in their success. In the aftermath of the engagement, the crew assessed damage and ensured the convoy's safety. Emily moved among her peers, assisting with reports, verifying sensor data, and analyzing the events to prevent future risks. Even the most skeptical sailors, who had once questioned her abilities, now sought her opinion and guidance. Her small stature, quiet demeanor, and faded anchor tattoo no longer defined her in the eyes of the crew. Her competence, courage, and clarity under fire had earned her respect. Lieutenant Commander Harris called Emily to the bridge privately. "Carter," she said, her tone unusually warm, "you were exceptional today. Your observations, calculations, and coordination made the difference. The crew and I noticed. You've earned their respect, and more importantly, you've earned your place here." Emily felt a mixture of pride, relief, and humility. She nodded, her fingers tracing the outline of her anchor tattoo, silently acknowledging the promise. It represented courage, vigilance, and the determination to rise to every challenge. The first strike had changed everything. Emily's role aboard the Valor was no longer limited to monitoring sensors or assisting officers. She was now a critical component of the ship's operational effectiveness. Crew members deferred to her. In critical situations, valued her input during strategy discussions, and recognized her as someone capable of acting decisively when it mattered most. Even in the high-stakes environment of naval combat, she had proven herself not through brute force, but through intelligence, precision, and unwavering focus. Despite the exhilaration of success, Emily remained vigilant. She understood that each engagement, no matter how small, carried lessons and potential consequences. She spent hours reviewing the events, analyzing the performance of both her own actions and those of the crew. She identified small improvements, adjustments in protocol, and strategies to enhance readiness for future encounters. Emily's meticulous approach ensured that the Valor's team not only survived, but thrived, learning from each experience and becoming stronger as a unit. The anchor tattoo on Emily's wrist, once a source of mockery, had become a symbol of earned respect, capability, and determination. It was a constant reminder of her grandfather's words, "Live the promise." In every calculation, every decision, every moment of courage, she honored that legacy. The first strike had tested her beyond anything boot camp or routine patrol could prepare her for. She had faced the real threat of conflict, navigated it with clarity and composure, and emerged as an indispensable member of the crew. By the end of the day, the ocean had calmed, and the USS Valor resumed its patrols with a renewed sense of purpose. Emily stood at the railing, watching the sun dip below the horizon, painting the sky with colors that mirrored the turbulence and triumph of the day. She reflected on the journey that had brought her here, from a small-town girl with a faded anchor tattoo to a skilled, respected sailor capable of navigating life-and-death situations with intelligence and courage. Her journey was far from over, but she had proven to herself and everyone aboard that she was more than capable. As the ship continued its course, Emily's thoughts shifted to the future. The first strike had been a baptism of fire, but it had also revealed her true potential. She had discovered the depth of her resilience, the sharpness of her instincts, and the value of steadfast focus in moments of crisis. Each wave, each radar blip, each decision now held greater significance. Emily Carter had stepped fully into the role she had dreamed of, earning the trust and respect of her crew while embracing the challenges and responsibilities of naval service. The night fell over the ocean, calm but watchful. Emily remained on deck, her gaze fixed on the horizon, feeling the wind against her face. The first strike was a memory, but the lessons it carried were enduring. She had confronted danger head-on, relied on her training, and demonstrated courage that no one could dismiss. Her anchor tattoo, now a symbol of experience, vigilance, and earned respect, seemed to hum with quiet pride. Emily Carter had survived her first real combat engagement, and she was ready for whatever the sea and life might demand next. Weeks after the first strike, the USS Valor sailed steadily across the Atlantic, its crew moving with a rhythm born of experience and mutual trust. Emily Carter had settled into her role with a quiet authority that earned the respect of sailors and officers alike. The initial skepticism of her peers had dissolved, replaced by admiration for her intelligence, composure, and decisiveness. She had proven herself in crisis, demonstrating that courage was measured not in size or bravado, but in vigilance, preparation, and the ability to act calmly under pressure. Emily's daily routine reflected her commitment to excellence. She rose before dawn, reviewing ship schematics, radar protocols, and tactical manuals. She led her team in simulations, helping other recruits and junior sailors refine their skills. Her anchor tattoo, once ridiculed, had become a subtle emblem of steadfastness and dedication. Crew members watched her quietly, noting the precision of her movements, the clarity of her instructions, and the patience she displayed while training others. Emily's leadership style was not one of dominance, but of guidance and mentorship, and it inspired confidence across the ship. Lieutenant Commander Harris recognized Emily's growing influence and began to assign her greater responsibilities. She was asked to lead coordination exercises during patrols, oversee sensor integration for complex operations, and provide tactical advice during simulations of enemy engagement. Emily approached these tasks with the same meticulous attention she had shown during her first strike. Every calculation, every recommendation, every assessment was precise, informed by both training and intuition. Her ability to anticipate challenges before they occurred became an asset to the crew, solidifying her reputation as a rising leader. Despite the accolades, Emily remained humble. She understood that leadership required more than skill. It demanded empathy, patience, and the ability to inspire trust. She spent hours observing her crew, learning their strengths, weaknesses, and personalities. She noticed how the quieter sailors hesitated to speak up during drills, and how the brash ones sometimes misjudged risk. Emily adapted her guidance accordingly, offering encouragement, constructive feedback, and a steady example of discipline. Slowly, the crew began to function as a more cohesive unit, responding with confidence and precision to even the most challenging exercises. The transformation was not limited to operational skills. Emily also learned the subtle art of diplomacy aboard the ship. Conflicts occasionally arose among the crew, tensions exacerbated by long hours, cramped quarters, and the stress of deployment. Emily became a mediator, listening carefully, understanding perspectives, and suggesting compromises that maintained harmony without undermining authority. Her calm presence diffused arguments before they escalated, earning her the trust of both peers and officers. She was no longer simply a skilled sailor. She was a cornerstone of the ship's culture, someone who embodied the values of respect, responsibility, and resilience. Her leadership was put to the test during a series of increasingly complex drills simulating hostile encounters. One exercise involved coordinating multiple ship systems to track several fast-moving targets while maintaining optimal formation with allied vessels. Emily's role was critical. She analyzed sensor data, predicted enemy movements, and directed the crew with precision. The drill ended successfully, with the Valor executing maneuvers flawlessly. Officers praised her foresight, noting that her guidance had prevented potential errors and ensured smooth execution. Emily felt a quiet pride, but she knew there was always room for improvement, always another layer of skill to acquire. Emily also continued to refine her technical abilities. She spent nights studying advanced navigation systems, missile guidance protocols, and sonar technology. Her curiosity and dedication led her to discover subtle improvements in operational efficiency, small adjustments that increased responsiveness and minimized risk during maneuvers. Officers began to consult her during planning sessions, valuing her insight as both practical and innovative. Her anchor tattoo, once a source of ridicule, had become a symbol of earned expertise and steadfast resolve. Emily felt a deep connection to the legacy it represented and the promise she had made to herself to rise to every challenge. The crew faced a particularly intense test when intelligence reported potential threats in nearby international waters. Emily's responsibilities expanded to include monitoring communications, analyzing data for potential security breaches, and coordinating with allied ships in the area. Each decision had consequences, and the stakes were high. Emily remained calm, guiding her team with clarity, ensuring that every action was deliberate and every protocol followed. Her ability to remain composed under pressure inspired confidence throughout the ship, reinforcing her emerging role as a key leader in both operations and morale. During one critical exercise, the USS Valor simulated engagement with a coordinated enemy fleet. Emily identified a blind spot in the formation that could have left the ship vulnerable. She recommended a course adjustment and the strategic repositioning of weapon systems, ensuring optimal defense while maintaining the integrity of allied formations. Lieutenant Commander Harris implemented the recommendations, and the drill concluded successfully. Crew members who had once doubted Emily now regarded her as indispensable. Her calm analysis, foresight, and decisiveness had become a standard, against which others measured their own performance. Emily's leadership was not without personal challenges. Long hours, relentless responsibility, and the constant pressure of deployment tested her physically and mentally. There were nights when fatigue threatened her concentration, moments when frustration with slow-moving processes gnawed at her resolve. Yet she persisted, relying on discipline, mindfulness, and the silent encouragement of her grandfather's anchor tattoo. She reminded herself that leadership was not about perfection. It was about steady commitment, clear judgment, and the courage to act decisively when circumstances demanded. Her growing influence aboard the Valor also extended to mentoring younger sailors. Emily took time to teach navigational techniques, operational protocols, and tactical decision-making. She emphasized the importance of observation, critical thinking, and preparation, sharing lessons learned from her own experiences. Junior crew members admired her approachability and willingness to guide them without condescension. Emily's mentorship fostered a culture of learning and mutual respect, strengthening the ship's overall readiness and cohesion. Her quiet authority, grounded in competence and integrity, became an anchor for the crew, an embodiment of the very legacy her tattoo represented. Recognition from senior officers followed. Lieutenant Commander Harris recommended Emily for advanced leadership training and operational specialization programs. Her skill set, calm under pressure, and ability to inspire trust made her a candidate for critical assignments. Emily accepted the opportunities with humility, understanding that each new challenge was both a test and a chance to grow. She spent hours preparing, studying advanced tactics, and simulating potential scenarios, ensuring that she was ready for the responsibilities that would inevitably come with promotion and recognition. The USS Valor faced additional operational challenges as the deployment continued. Threats in the region required precise coordination with allied forces, constant vigilance, and rapid response to emerging situations. Emily's role expanded further. She became integral in planning patrol routes, monitoring potential risks, and ensuring that the ship's systems operated at peak efficiency. Her insights were respected, her decisions trusted, and her ability to remain composed under high-pressure circumstances, became a benchmark for excellence aboard the ship. Emily's reputation continued to grow, both among her peers and within the broader naval community. Word of her competence, reliability, and leadership reached other ships and commands. Crew members who had once questioned her abilities now looked to her for guidance, advice, and support. The faded anchor tattoo on her wrist, a quiet symbol of her journey and promise, had become a testament to her resilience, skill, and dedication. Emily had risen from a small-town recruit to a key leader aboard one of the Navy's most advanced vessels, ready for challenges that demanded courage, intelligence, and decisiveness. By the end of the deployment period, Emily had transformed, not just in rank, but in reputation and confidence. Her journey from uncertain recruit to respected leader had been forged through perseverance, skill, and unwavering commitment to excellence. She had earned the trust of her crew, the recognition of her officers, and the quiet admiration of peers who had once doubted her. Emily Carter was no longer simply the girl with the faded anchor tattoo. She was a sailor, a leader, and a symbol of steadfast courage in the face of challenge. The ocean stretched endlessly beyond the USS Valor, a reminder that the world was vast, unpredictable, and full of potential danger. Emily looked toward the horizon, feeling both the weight of responsibility and the exhilaration of possibility. She had faced her first real threats, navigated crisis with skill, and risen through the ranks with quiet determination. The anchor tattoo on her wrist felt alive with significance, a constant reminder of her promise to herself and the legacy she carried forward. Whatever the future held, Emily Carter knew she was ready. The USS Valor sliced through the calm waters of the Atlantic, its hull cutting waves that glimmered under the early morning sun. Emily Carter stood at her station on the bridge, reviewing tactical displays with meticulous care. Intelligence had reported a fleet of rogue vessels operating near a key shipping route, and the threat level had been elevated. This was unlike anything she had faced before. No simulations, no drills, just the real, unpredictable stakes of naval engagement. Every decision, every calculation mattered. For Emily, this mission was more than duty. It was an opportunity to prove her capabilities at the highest level. Word had spread aboard the Valor that Admiral Thompson, a highly respected figure in the U.S. Navy, would be observing this mission. The Admiral's presence added a layer of tension to the crew's already heightened alertness. Emily knew that every action, every report, and every command would be scrutinized. She welcomed the pressure, channeling it into focused energy. Her eyes moved from radar to sonar, scanning the horizon for anomalies, noting the speed, direction, and behavior of nearby vessels. She could feel the weight of responsibility pressing down, yet she remained calm. Her anchor tattoo, a subtle reminder of her grandfather's words and her promise to herself. The briefing earlier had been concise but urgent. Admiral Thompson had emphasized vigilance, coordination, and quick decision-making. "Miss Carter," the Admiral had said with a measured tone, "you've earned the Valor's respect. Now we'll see how you perform under observation. Your judgment could save lives today." Emily had nodded, suppressing the flutter of nerves. This was the moment she had been preparing for, the culmination of every drill, deployment, and strike she had experienced. She felt ready, steady, and determined to demonstrate that competence and courage outweighed size, skepticism, and appearances. Hours into the patrol, reports indicated that the rogue fleet was approaching the shipping lane faster than predicted. Emily coordinated with radar and sonar teams, meticulously tracking every vessel. She analyzed movement patterns and projected trajectories, communicating critical updates to the bridge. Lieutenant Commander Harris, observing Emily's performance closely, noted her steady composure and precise directives. The crew relied on her guidance with increasing confidence, responding quickly to each adjustment she recommended. Emily's ability to synthesize data and anticipate threats, had transformed from promising skill to essential operational leadership. The first major challenge arose when one of the rogue vessels split from the main group and accelerated toward the convoy. Emily's calculations indicated a high probability of collision or hostile engagement. She immediately relayed her assessment to Lieutenant Commander Harris, suggesting a combination of evasive maneuvers and targeted warnings to neutralize the threat without unnecessary escalation. The bridge responded swiftly, adjusting the Valor's heading and alerting nearby Allied ships. Emily's quick analysis and decisive action prevented the rogue vessel from reaching the convoy, averting a potential disaster. Admiral Thompson observed silently from the aft section of the bridge, his expression unreadable but attentive. Emily was aware of the Admiral's presence, yet she maintained her focus, her mind attuned to every sensor reading and tactical variable. She calculated angles of approach, speed vectors, and weapon readiness, ensuring that the Valor remained both protected and prepared to act if the rogue fleet attempted further aggression. Her calm efficiency inspired confidence in the crew, who had now come to trust her instincts implicitly. As the rogue fleet regrouped, Emily identified a pattern. They were attempting to isolate the Valor from the convoy, likely to test its defensive capabilities. She communicated a precise counter-strategy to Lieutenant Commander Harris, suggesting strategic positioning and targeted deployment of countermeasures. The ship's systems responded flawlessly, guided by Emily's calculations. The rogue vessels were unable to exploit any weaknesses, their maneuvers anticipated and neutralized. Emily's anchor tattoo, faint but visible, seemed almost symbolic in that moment, a mark of steadfast courage, precision, and quiet authority. Midway through the engagement, one rogue vessel attempted a daring maneuver, approaching from a blind spot that had previously gone unnoticed. Emily, however, had been monitoring auxiliary radar feeds and noticed the deviation instantly. She issued rapid, clear instructions to the bridge, adjusting the ship's trajectory while alerting weapons teams. The maneuver successfully intercepted the rogue vessel's approach, forcing it to retreat. Crew members exchanged relieved glances, silently acknowledging the critical role Emily had played in the operation. Even Admiral Thompson's gaze betrayed a hint of approval, a subtle nod to the young sailor's extraordinary situational awareness. Hours passed in a tense but controlled standoff. Emily continued to monitor all systems, tracking vessel movements, anticipating potential maneuvers, and coordinating defensive strategies. She maintained continuous communication with Allied ships, ensuring a unified response. Every decision was precise, deliberate, and informed by both data and intuition. The crew moved as a cohesive unit, guided by Emily's leadership and the trust she had earned. By this point, any lingering skepticism had vanished. Emily was no longer simply a skilled sailor, but a tactical leader whose judgment could be relied upon in the most critical moments. The climax of the engagement arrived when the rogue fleet attempted a concentrated offensive maneuver, aiming to overwhelm the Valor's defenses and create a path to the convoy. Emily immediately recognized the strategy and calculated the optimal counter-response. She coordinated with weapon systems, guided evasive maneuvers, and relayed critical adjustments to Allied vessels. The Valor responded with seamless precision, intercepting the rogue fleet's approach while maintaining convoy safety. The engagement ended with the rogue vessels retreating, unable to breach the Valor's defenses. Emily's foresight, analysis, and calm decisiveness had ensured the safety of both the ship and the convoy. After the engagement, Admiral Thompson addressed the crew, his tone both solemn and admiring. "The crew of the USS Valor performed exceptionally," he said, "but one sailor's leadership and judgment stood out. Miss Carter, your vigilance, tactical skill, and composure under pressure were instrumental in today's success." You have earned my personal respect and the admiration of everyone aboard this ship." The bridge erupted in quiet applause, the crew acknowledging Emily's critical contributions. She felt a swell of pride, tempered by humility, knowing that the moment was not just about recognition, but about the responsibility and trust she had earned. Emily, standing at her station, allowed herself a brief reflection. The anchor tattoo on her wrist, once mocked as insignificant, now symbolized resilience, skill, and the quiet power of steadfast commitment. Every drill, deployment, and engagement had prepared her for this defining moment. She had proven herself, not through bluster or bravado, but through intelligence, preparation, and courage under pressure. Her journey from a small-town recruit to a recognized tactical leader was a testament to the strength of determination and the importance of rising to every challenge. The days that followed solidified Emily's status aboard the Valor. Officers consulted her on strategic decisions, and crew members sought her guidance during exercises. Her ability to anticipate threats, coordinate complex operations, and inspire trust made her indispensable. Even the most skeptical sailors, who had once whispered doubts about her anchor tattoo or small stature, now recognized her as a cornerstone of the ship's operational success. Emily had become a symbol of quiet authority, intelligence, and unwavering dedication. The mission's success also had broader implications. Reports of the Valor's engagement reached Naval Command, highlighting Emily's role in preventing potential disaster and safeguarding the convoy. Lieutenant Commander Harris submitted a detailed commendation, emphasizing her foresight, tactical skill, and leadership under pressure. Emily's contributions were no longer confined to the ship. They had captured the attention of senior command, signaling that her career trajectory was poised for remarkable advancement. Even in the calm after the engagement, Emily remained vigilant. She spent hours reviewing the mission, analyzing every decision, and identifying areas for improvement. Her commitment to continuous learning and excellence had been a defining factor in her success. She understood that leadership was not static. It required adaptation, foresight, and the humility to learn from every experience. Emily's anchor tattoo, fading yet indelible, reminded her daily of the promise she had made to live boldly, act decisively, and honor the legacy of courage it represented. By nightfall, the USS Valor sailed steadily, the stars reflecting on the ocean surface. Emily stood at the railing, feeling the cool wind on her face, reflecting on the magnitude of the day. The Admiral's challenge had tested her in every way, physically, mentally, and emotionally. She had risen to the occasion, demonstrating not only technical skill and tactical acumen, but also leadership, composure, and courage. Emily Carter was no longer simply a competent sailor. She was a recognized leader whose judgment and bravery had earned the respect of the highest naval authority. The experience changed Emily. She understood now the true weight of responsibility, the trust placed in those who commanded, and the importance of remaining vigilant under pressure. The anchor tattoo on her wrist was no longer just a symbol of heritage. It was a personal emblem of accomplishment, perseverance, and the quiet power of dedication. Emily Carter had faced her defining challenge and emerged stronger, wiser, and ready for the next stage of her naval journey. As the USS Valor sailed into the night, Emily reflected on the lessons she had learned. Leadership was not about asserting dominance. It was about earning trust through competence, guiding others with clarity, and making decisions that prioritized safety, strategy, and mission success. Her path was far from over. More challenges, more threats, and more opportunities awaited. But Emily knew, with quiet certainty, that she was ready. Her anchor tattoo faded, yet resolute reminded her that courage, preparation, and steadfast determination would guide her through whatever lay ahead. The USS Valor returned to port with the quiet dignity of a ship that had fulfilled its duty with precision and courage. Crew members moved efficiently across the deck, conducting final checks, securing equipment, and preparing for debriefing. Emily Carter stood on the bridge, gazing at the horizon as the familiar outline of the naval base appeared. After weeks of relentless patrols, high-stakes drills, and real-world engagements, the mission had concluded. Yet Emily knew that this return was more than routine. It was a moment that would mark a turning point in her career and legacy. Word had spread through the base before the Valor even docked. Admiral Thompson had requested a formal ceremony to recognize the crew's service, and specifically Emily's extraordinary contributions during the recent engagements. The anticipation aboard the ship was palpable. Sailors who had once doubted her abilities now moved with subtle pride, their glances toward Emily a mixture of admiration and respect. Even the officers who had once been skeptical of her small stature and quiet demeanor acknowledged the critical role she had played in protecting the convoy, neutralizing hostile vessels, and ensuring the Valor's operational success. As the ship approached the dock, Emily reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She remembered the early days, the mocking laughter at her faded anchor tattoo, and the quiet determination that had driven her to prove herself. Each deployment, each crisis, each engagement had shaped her into a leader, capable of commanding respect not through intimidation, but through intelligence, precision, and unwavering courage. Emily understood that the path to recognition was never about seeking applause. It was about consistent excellence, steady focus, and dedication to the mission. A ceremony was held on the pier, with the Valor docked majestically against the water. Crew members lined the deck, standing at attention as officers, dignitaries, and journalists assembled. Admiral Thompson stepped forward, his presence commanding attention. The air was thick with anticipation, the hum of conversations subdued. As the Admiral spoke, "Today, we honor not only the crew of the USS Valor for their exemplary service, but also one individual whose skill, judgment, and courage have set a standard for all sailors to follow." The Admiral's eyes met Emily's, and she felt the weight of the moment settle over her. "Petty Officer Emily Carter," he continued, "your vigilance, strategic insight, and leadership during critical engagements have safeguarded lives, secured operational success, and earned the admiration of your peers and superiors alike. From your first strike to the recent Admiral's challenge, you have exemplified the highest standards of the United States Navy. Your contributions have not gone unnoticed, and today I salute you." Time seemed to slow as the Admiral stepped forward and gave Emily a formal salute. The gesture, simple yet profoundly symbolic, represented recognition, respect, and acknowledgement from the highest level of command. Emily returned the salute, her hands steady, her posture precise. In that moment, the faded anchor tattoo on her wrists seemed to glow with meaning, a symbol of resilience, courage, and the promise she had made to herself years ago. The mocking laughter of the past was replaced with applause, admiration, and the quiet reverence of a crew witnessing a defining moment in one of their own. As the ceremony concluded, crew members approached Emily with congratulations, handshakes, and quiet words of respect. Even those who had once doubted her abilities acknowledged the truth that had become undeniable. Emily Carter had earned her place not through charm or appearance, but through relentless dedication, intelligence, and courage under fire. She had transformed from a small-town recruit with a faded tattoo into a symbol of steadfastness, reliability, and leadership. Her journey was a testament to the power of perseverance and quiet determination. In the days that followed, Emily's recognition extended beyond the Valor. Her story spread across the naval base and into broader military circles. Officers from other commands sought her advice. Junior sailors requested mentorship, and reports praised her contributions in operational reviews. Emily embraced the opportunities to guide, teach, and inspire, understanding that leadership was not only about personal achievement, but about elevating those around her. She conducted training sessions, shared tactical insights, and encouraged others to embrace both discipline and initiative. Despite the accolades and attention, Emily remained grounded. She knew that recognition was a milestone, not a destination. Each mission, each decision, each moment at sea carried the potential for challenge and risk. She maintained her vigilance, her commitment to precision, and her focus on continuous learning. The faded anchor tattoo on her wrist served as a daily reminder that courage, dedication, and resilience were lifelong commitments, not simply badges to display, but principles to live by. Months passed, and Emily's career continued to flourish. She was promoted, given greater responsibilities, and entrusted with increasingly complex operations. Her tactical insight became a cornerstone of the Valor's success, and her leadership style inspired loyalty, discipline, and initiative throughout the crew. Emily's journey had taught her that true recognition was earned through consistent action, integrity, and the quiet confidence to make decisions under pressure. The tattoo that had once drawn ridicule now symbolized a journey of triumph and personal transformation. Emily also became a mentor, guiding new recruits who arrived aboard the Valor. She shared lessons from her experiences, how to remain calm under pressure, the importance of observation and analysis, and the value of earning respect through competence rather than appearances. Her guidance shaped a new generation of sailors, instilling in them the same principles that had carried her through countless challenges. Emily's influence extended far beyond the tactical realm. She was a model of professionalism, courage, and quiet authority. One evening, as the sun set over the dock, Emily stood on the deck of the Valor, her gaze fixed on the horizon. The water shimmered with the fading light, mirroring the turbulence and triumph of her journey. She reflected on the adversities she had faced, the ridicule, the doubt, the relentless challenges of high-stakes operations. Each obstacle had been a step toward growth, each engagement a lesson in patience, strategy, and leadership. Emily understood that her journey was both personal and collective, shaped by her actions and the trust of those around her. The anchor tattoo on her wrist, though faded, carried renewed significance. It was no longer just a symbol of heritage or prowess. It was a testament to perseverance, courage, and the ability to rise above doubt and adversity. Emily traced its outline with her fingers, silently acknowledging the journey that had brought her here. She had faced fear, navigated danger, and emerged stronger, wiser, and recognized by the highest levels of command. Her story was one of resilience, skill, and unwavering dedication, a story that would inspire others to pursue excellence, regardless of the obstacles in their path. In the quiet moments that followed, the USS Valor continued its routine operations, its crew moving with disciplined efficiency. Emily's presence on the bridge was both a reassurance and an example. Sailors who had once questioned her abilities now looked to her for guidance, mentorship, and inspiration. Officers relied on her judgment during critical decisions, trusting her experience and insight. Emily's leadership had become integral to the Valor's operational success and morale. She had earned not only recognition, but also a lasting place of respect and authority aboard the ship. The day of the Admiral's salute became a defining point in Emily Carter's career, a symbol of her transformation from an underestimated recruit to a respected leader. Her legacy was not defined solely by her actions in combat, but by her unwavering dedication, mentorship, and ability to inspire those around her. The faded anchor tattoo, once a target of ridicule, now represented the culmination of years of effort, courage, and resilience, a visual testament to a journey marked by determination and excellence. As Emily looked out over the water, she understood the truth of her journey. Success was not measured by recognition alone, but by the growth, trust, and respect earned along the way. She had proven herself repeatedly, not through bravado or appearance, but through intelligence, preparation, and courage under pressure. The salute from Admiral Thompson had been a formal acknowledgment, but the deeper reward was the respect of her peers, the trust of her crew, and the knowledge that she had lived the promise she had made to herself. The USS Valor continued its patrols, and Emily Carter continued her service, steadfast, vigilant, and ready for whatever challenges awaited. The story of her journey marked by a faded anchor tattoo, relentless dedication, and extraordinary courage would serve as an enduring example of excellence, resilience, and leadership in the United States Navy. Emily had risen above doubt, faced danger, and earned her place at the forefront of naval operations. Her legacy was secured, not just in accolades or promotions, but in the lives she had protected, the crew she had inspired, and the example she had set for future generations of sailors. As night fell, Emily stood alone on the deck, the stars reflected in the calm water. She traced the anchor tattoo on her wrist one final time, feeling its quiet significance. It had guided her through ridicule, crisis, and recognition. It had been her silent companion, her emblem of courage, and her reminder of the promise she had made to live boldly, act decisively, and honor the legacy of those who had come before her. Emily Carter had fulfilled that promise, and her journey was a testament to the enduring power of resilience, dedication, and unwavering courage.